This morning, we are going to talk about Ireland. And this is a program that was scheduled for this coming June. But of course, like all of our programs, we have had to reschedule and put off until next year. And so, yeah, we're looking forward to going in June of 2022 from the 12th to the 24th. I am planning on hosting this trip myself. It's been a few years since I've been in Ireland. I love it so much. I know that a number of our members have been there already, and yeah, it's a fantastic country to visit, like all the ones on our list. A couple of words for those of you who have not traveled with us before, not attended one of our webinars. What Wheel and Anchor is all about bringing travelers together. And so what that means is we have a group of like-minded people who aspire to traveling maybe a little bit more slowly, really getting to know the places that we stop along the way and getting to know each other. I mean, one of the things that we have in common on our trips, for those of you who've come along on one of our trips before, we just have a lot of fun. And there's been some great friendships that have emerged from our different trips over the years. And my personal goal for every one of our members is to become well-traveled and well-connected. And it's really about creating a deep connection with the places, with the people, the traditions and culture that we experience all along the way. And in doing so, we become connected to the people that we meet and the people that we travel with. So that's our mission at Wheel and Anchor. On our webinar today, as usual, my usual team. So I'm Gordon, founder of Wheel and Anchor, and my colleagues, teammates, my family, Joel and Paula, my remote family. We haven't seen each other in over a year because we're all in different parts of the world, but we are a tight-knit group, and so some of you will have spoken to Paula before on the plan. So today, our plan, as usual, we're going to take a little bit of a tour to take you through Ireland, the wonderful rugged landscape and the charm of the Irish people. I will be your guide, not only on our webinar today, but also on our trip next year. And we are going to be taking a look at what Ireland has in store for us in June of next year. Ireland needs no introduction. I think, most of us have had some experience about Irish culture, Irish drink, Irish cheer, of course, the land of leprechauns and shamrocks, and of course, St. Patrick's Day and Guinness. I mean, all icons of this country. And yet going there it's offers so many different surprises because it goes far beyond these images, these icons of the country, so we'll really experience what it's all about. The castles and the ruins, like this statistic here, 30,000 of them in the country. So the ancient history, and of course, so many of us in Canada, so many people are of Irish heritage, and I know that that's interesting for people who know that they have that background, and to be able to sort of explore and understand a little bit about what that is all about. Our program will begin, of course, in the wonderful capital city of Dublin, and we'll spend 4 nights there. It won't nearly seem like enough, but I know that some people will probably stay on a few extra days at the end. We'll go by train across the country to the west coast, to Galway, in Clare County, the beautiful, beautiful landscapes along the western coast, passing down by coach by the Cliffs of Moher down to Killarney, where we'll spend a few more days visiting the Ring of Kerry and some of the other wonderful sites on the southwest coast of Ireland before stopping in Cork, the second largest city of the country, and then heading again by train back to Dublin. So that's our overall itinerary. Now notice that this program is focused on the Republic of Ireland, the south of Ireland, and if there is sort of enough interest from some of our members, I'll talk about that at the end. We may add on an extension program for a few nights up in Belfast and the equally spectacular northern coast of Ireland, which I've driven around myself, and it's just all the way around. The coast is so beautiful. So let's take a look at our day-by-day itinerary and see what this program has in store for us. So as I say, we'll be beginning our trip in Dublin. Pretty easy city to get to, at least up until COVID started. We have direct flights from Toronto to Dublin on both Air Canada and Aer Lingus. Let's hope that those schedules return. I'm sure they will, but easily accessible from other parts of Canada as well. And it all begins in Dublin. And Dublin, when you arrive in the city, it in some respects, the old part of the city downtown along the River Liffey will be somewhat reminiscent of like London and other cities in the British Isles. But at the same time, it's very, very different, right? Dublin is known for really stunning cathedrals, its haunted palaces, of course, the pubs and clubs. I mean, the Irish pubs, this is, needless to say, not only the capital of Ireland, but the capital of the Irish pub scene. So it's a very, very vibrant city. As you'll see in the picture here, not only does it have, of course, the beautiful older style of buildings, but there's some very modern ones. Ireland, of course, has become a tech capital of Europe. They lowered the taxes back in the 1990s to attract all the big tech companies. And so as a result, it had a huge influx of capital investment, and you really see that, particularly in Dublin and in the outskirts, and it lifted the standard of living there greatly in the last 20 or 30 years or so. So as usual, we'll start our trip in Dublin. We're going to be staying right downtown, so you can wander off to Trinity College and to all the wonderful sites that are the James Joyce Museum. Everything is really within walking distance, and we'll have 3 solid days to enjoy that on our own. Of course, on our first day, we'll have a good solid, almost a full day trip. It'll be largely on foot, although we'll have a coach to support us as well. And we'll visit some of the highlights that you must see while you're in Dublin: Marion Square with the beautiful Georgian Gardens, the Halfpenny Bridge, which crosses, of course, the River Liffey, a very famous footbridge. And inside Trinity College itself, the incredible library with the Book of Kells, which of course is one of the manuscripts of the New Testament. And you can't visit Dublin without, of course, going to the Guinness brewery itself and tasting this. And I think people have a love-hate relationship with Guinness. I tend to be one of those people. It's not really my favorite beverage, to be perfectly honest. But of course, there's a lot of history to it, and I think it's the number 1 selling alcoholic beverage or beer in the world. I mean, it's ubiquitous all around, and to see where it's from and to experience and taste it there is quite a treat. So you can't visit Dublin without doing that. We will have a full day after that to explore Dublin and some of the environs on our own. And of course, I'm a big believer in sort of slowing down the itinerary of our trips. More and more of our trips are designed along this theme of slow travel. So we have a full day of leisure right away, the second full day that we're in Dublin, to sort of look around. I'll probably head with those that want to go with me. We'll head up to Howth, which is on the coastline there, up to visit Howth Castle, just to get a little bit out into the countryside surrounding Dublin, to get a feel for what that Irish, the rural Irish area is all about. But there's so many things to do. You just got to wander around and soak it all in. Later in the afternoon, regardless if we go together and up to a place like Howth, or whether you just explore Dublin a little bit on your own, we'll get together and we'll visit yet another of the beverages that Ireland is so famous for. And that's, of course, Irish whiskey, the Jameson Distillery. We'll have a chance to go and get a taste, and you can really see the difference. In fact, I poured myself a little glass this evening, just to take the edge off, because I am a whiskey lover, and Irish whiskey is certainly one of those things that is, I think, part of visiting Ireland. We'll have dinner in the famous Temple Bar area. That's sort of the entertainment part of Dublin, and we'll either walk or maybe a slight stagger back to our hotel, or of course we can jump in a cab. But all in all, I think it'll be a fun evening and a good way as a group to explore and have some fun in Dublin. Then the next day, we're going to head out to the county of Wicklow. And this is where we'll get our first sample of the Irish countryside. And, if you sort of closed your eyes and imagine what Ireland is all about, these rolling green pastures and so on. This is sort of the epitome of it around here. And this particular county is known for its garden houses that are, these manor houses that are all spread through this incredible countryside. The highlight of the day will be visiting Kilkenny, which of course has the famous Kilkenny Castle into it, which is a medieval castle going back to the 13th century. And we'll stop in Kilkenny itself and have lunch and really get a feel for this eastern part of Ireland, which is these, the gentle rolling countryside. And again, our first chance to explore a little bit what the rural part of Ireland is all about. Back in Dublin for one final evening on this leg of the trip before next morning. We'll head down to the station and hop aboard a train. I really love train travel because I think it's a great way to just relax and sit back and see the countryside as you make our way across all the way from east to west, ending up at Galway. So this will be the second leg of our trip. Galway in what they call Hooker County. In this case, we're not talking about rugby players or ladies of the evening, but rather the hooker is the boat like the one that you see here. It's a traditional vessel, fishing vessel that they use in this coastal regions, where of course they still do a lot of fishing. So we'll have a bit of time to just relax and explore the town. The nice thing about Galway is that it's pretty compact, so you can wander around. We'll do a traditional evening of Irish folk music with dinner. And if you didn't already feel like you were in Ireland, you certainly will when you're in Galway, because of course Dublin has become such a multicultural city. I mean, it's certainly very Irish and but it's really out here in Galway in Killarney where you will feel like you are in the heartland of Ireland. Of course, the west coast of Ireland is where this is where the spectacular beauty of Ireland becomes most evident. And in particular, the day after we arrive in Galway, we're going to head down to Connemara, which is part of Clare County. And Connemara is one of the most sort of sought after, the most visited tourist destinations for the Irish themselves. It's filled with mountains and beaches and bogs, all bordered by the Atlantic Ocean. The weather in Ireland is never fabulous. I mean, I shouldn't say it's never fabulous, but it being where it is in the North Atlantic, the weather comes in and out, and no more pronounced than it does in this western part of the country. And so sometimes you get these incredible scenes of the mists going through the park and over the lakes. We'll take a trip up this Killarney fjord where they often have dolphins coming into town. We'll head up to a place called Kilmore Abbey, which was an old country lodge that they converted into a Benedictine abbey and has, again, some spectacular gardens. So all in all, this will be one of several days of just, absolute one photograph after another when we're visiting this area. We'll then, of course, have yet another free day in Galway. And for those that are, how should you say, have ants in their pants, much like me, because you just want to see as much as you possibly can, we may take a trip out to the Aran Islands. So I haven't put this in because it's something that we can either do, we can plan in advance. We'll talk about it in the weeks before we actually leave on the trip. If there's interest to go, you can either take a super short island hopper flight to get from Galway over to the Aran Islands, or you can also go by ferry, which takes up a chunk of the day. But there's some incredible, beauty, because these islands are sort of terraced plateau of rock sticking out of the sea. So it's quite a fascinating place to visit. But regardless if we choose to go out to the Aran Islands or not, we can do it on a last minute basis. Otherwise, just wandering around in Galway and exploring a little bit on our own just gives you time to sort of breathe and again, soak in that Irish charm that is, as I say, is even more pronounced on the West Coast. After that, after a few days in Galway and environs, we will hop on a coach and we'll make our way down this beautiful western coast towards Killarney. And here, of course, is one of the #1 places to visit in Ireland, the Cliffs of Moher. You can see them here. I think the picture says it all. It's not much to say about it. These 200-meter high cliffs with tremendous amount of bird life. Of course, the North Atlantic Ocean. I mean, it's all the way to Newfoundland. There's nothing in between. Harry Potter movies were filmed in this area. I mean, this is one of the most celebrated landscapes in the country. So on our way, after we make a stop in the Cliffs of Moher, we'll stop for a lovely lunch and might make our way down to Killarney. And Killarney is, again, next to Dublin, the most visited part of Ireland. I remember when I visited Killarney, it was almost more than 30 years ago, let's put it that way. And I just remember, this dramatic countryside, these sort of quaint pubs. It's certainly become a lot more visited now, and particularly the Ring of Kerry, which is where the most frequented tourist route in the country. It's a 180-kilometer long road trip that takes a few hours if you do it nonstop. We're going to take the whole day and pass through all these lovely towns and villages and lakes and bogs and mountain passes like the Gap of Dunlow, a number of different spots along there. The scenery is amazing. One of the places that I remember visiting that I asked to include on the itinerary is this Bog Village. And the bogs is where the peat, or they call it in Ireland, the turf, is actually harvested, and they use it as fuel to heat their homes, and they still use that today. I'm not sure how environmentally friendly that is, but it's actually part of the whole home heating regime, and it's just very interesting to see these wide expanses of bog and peat. So it's just a fascinating little tidbit that we'll see while we're traveling around this Ring of Kerry area. So from Killarney as well, and again, most trips to Ireland, and I looked at what some other tour companies offer, and generally speaking, they tend to make very short stops as you go around, and the Ring of Kerry is on everybody's agenda, but the Dingle Peninsula, much less so, and the scenery here is no less spectacular, but it attracts a fraction of the number of tourists. And this is why I like to go a little bit off the beaten track, a little bit beyond, spend the extra day and visit places like Dingle, which has an incredible archaeological heritage dating back some 6,000 years. And there's all of these, monuments and sites. And so you can visit some of these places without having the hordes of tourists that invariably you're going to get in June, which is the best month of the year to travel to Ireland. So it's also a relatively busy month to go. By going to places like Dingle, you really get that Irish, that flavor, that charm. One of the things that we wanted to see were in Dingle is that the town had a little mascot, this dolphin, that befriended the locals. But when we were supposed to go last year, this poor dolphin called Fungi went missing, and so far in last reports they haven't spotted him again. So we hope he has not met some bad fate. But this is one of the things that put Dingle sort of on the map. So one more evening in Killarney before we move on to the next leg. And Cork is a city that is again often visited on a day trip as people go between Dublin and Killarney. But I thought it was worth spending a day in Cork, or a night in Cork, because it's the second largest city in Ireland, and in many ways it's it's a very commercial, it's sort of an industrial city. But the heart of the city and its most famous landmark, of course, Blarney Castle, but Cork is a foodie destination. In fact, it is the destination for interesting culinary culinary treats, if you will, in Ireland. And so people come from all over Europe. So we're going to do a culinary tour while we're in Cork. But we'll also visit, Cork Harbor, which is interestingly the second largest natural harbor in the world after Sydney. So the city has a lot of interesting attributes to it, and I think is a bit underrated. And I know for sure that we're going to have a lot of fun while we're in Cork. Blarney Castle we'll actually visit the next day. As we head out of Cork, we'll spend the morning. We'll go to Blarney Castle. Of course, we'll kiss the Blarney Stone, or in this day and age, we probably will not do any such activities. People have told me I don't need to kiss the Blarney Stone because I've already been blessed with the gift of gab. But in case that's something that appeals to you, we will definitely do that. But otherwise, in County Cork, as I mentioned, Cobb Harbour, this large natural harbor, has some lovely towns in it, and one of them is Kinsale, which was interestingly the last stop of the Titanic before she made her ill-fated voyage. That obviously didn't make it to the United States. So there are some monuments and memorials to that. And today it's a seafood town. So we'll have a lovely seafood lunch here before we leave County Cork and make our way back to Dublin, which will be our final evening in Ireland for those that choose not to extend either on their own, or perhaps, as I say, we'll go as a group together to Northern Ireland. So we'll go by train again for our last little journey together as a group back to Dublin and spend one more night. And I'm sure that we'll all be wanting to head out, because by the time we've spent 2 weeks together, we're always a happy family, and we'll go for some pints in Dublin City in Temple Bar, and say farewell the next day, or we'll continue on. And so we didn't put it in the program this year, but we will put it out to those who decide to join us next year on the trip, whether or not we will extend a few days up to Northern Ireland. And Belfast as a city is not nearly as charming and pretty. I mean, as we all know, Belfast went through some hard times for decades in the struggles with the IRA and so on. It has come back a lot, but I still think it's worth spending a few nights, in particular because the coast of Northern Ireland really is quite remarkable. In particular, this area around the Giant's Causeway. And I recall when I last visited there, and I drove all along the northern coast, and it truly is. It rivals what you'll see in Galway and in Clare County on the west coast of Ireland. There's some phenomenal sights. So it may be worth spending a few extra days in Belfast, either together as a group or going on your own, because it's quite easy to access from Dublin. And then, of course, you can fly from Belfast via London or via Dublin back to Canada, or continue on from there. So that basically wraps up our trip. I think it's overall it's a fairly compact trip. We can manage and see a lot of the country in just 2 weeks. Let me give you a little bit of the overview, some of the details. Of course, our brochure, our beautiful brochure produced by Joel, is available to be downloaded if you haven't gotten it already. Our program is priced Canadian dollars, of course, as usual, at $67.90 for double occupancy. And like all of our programs, it is quite inclusive. We have a wonderful Irish guide who is going to be taking us all around for the whole trip. And we've got a couple lovely train trips included in the program, and lunches and dinners throughout. And, again, we try to focus on going to places that are not, the typical touristy places, right? I like to handpick our restaurants, our hotels, so that we really have a true Irish experience. Exclusions, as usual, we can arrange airfare for you, which is separate, and cancellation medical insurance and so on, the usual things. But our trips, as you know, quite inclusive. Talking about airfare, as I've said in all of our recent webinars, the jury is still out a little bit, but I am cautiously optimistic that things will stabilize and we'll be able to get airfares in roughly the same price range as we have been able to before. But we are watching it carefully and we will find out. So if you have any questions about this program, and of course we're going to have our Q&A session now, and I see a few questions have come in, but please do give Paula a call. We've been fairly busy in the last few weeks. I think people are anxious to make plans for next year, but give us a call, drop us an email, and let us know what you'd like to know, and what would be helpful to know to be able to book this trip. So yeah, so let's look at some of the questions now that some of our members have put in. So a number of comments about Guinness. As Fran says, Guinness tastes better in Ireland. I tend to agree with that. That's often the case when you taste some of these wines or beers or other spirits. It tastes better when you're there than it does back home. Yeah, so all right, so let me just go over to the Q&A box here so I can see the questions. Just bear with me for 1 second. Is this one of the places that the plane lands on the beach in the Aran Islands? Yes, that's right, Fran. So to fly to the Aran Islands, it's basically a small little aircraft, and you actually fly from a regional airport at Galway, and you land pretty much on the beach. So the flight itself is definitely a bit of an adventure. And then a question about the extension to Northern Ireland. I believe when we had it in the program from last year, we did 3 nights, and it was around 800 Canadian dollars, which included the transportation, the accommodation, meals, and a day trip up to the North Coast. But I will look into that for you, because we didn't actually get it together in time for the webinar. So if that's of interest, please do let us know when you're inquiring, and we'll put that information together. Ginny and Ian asked about an average of sunny days. Well, that is a good question, because the weather in Ireland is changeable, and we picked June because Ireland is notorious, frankly, for inclement weather. But I would say it's 50-50. Is my experience in Ireland. So you're likely to get nice weather in June about half the time, and it's likely to be sort of misty and gray the other half of the time. That's the reality of Ireland, and that's the best month of the year to travel. We might get lucky. We might have more sunny days than that. We might get unlucky. But the nice thing is that, for the most part of the charm of Ireland, part of the feel of this countryside is the weather, and even if it's not sort of ideal and perfect sunny days, but that's just part of it. And then we have a question here: currency in Ireland? Yes, the currency in Ireland is now the euro, so it's part of the EU, and they gave up the Irish punt since I first visited Ireland many years ago. So makes it a little bit easier dealing with euros. Good. I don't think I see any other questions, so please do let us know if you have anything else that you'd like to know about this program. Coming up next week, our next Wheel and Anchor webinar will be about the Ultimate Nile Cruise. Fran, if you didn't get the brochure already, Paula will send a copy of it to you, but it should be available on the website as well. So we'll make sure that we get a link for that so you can get a copy of the brochure. As I mentioned, next week, we will be featuring the Ultimate Nile Cruise. And I know some people on the webinar were with me last year, which was our last trip before the pandemic hit. And this is a very special program, which is by Private Dahabia. This is one of these luxurious small vessels that has only 6 cabins on it. And we'll be sailing down the Nile with our own dedicated Egyptologist and visiting all these incredible sites, including one of the temples that not many people visit. So join us next week and find out all about that. Thank you for joining me this week and hearing all about Ireland. It's a great place to visit. We're going to have a lot of fun next year, and look forward to seeing you all very, very soon.